We all know Dr. Doofenshmirtz holds a grudge against every single living being on Earth, and that he actively seeks revenge on them, hoping to resolve his many childhood traumas. However, on his long list of enemies, there's one notable exception: his parents. It's no secret Mr. and Mrs. Doofenshmirtz have always treated their son horribly his entire life. However, Heinz never once sought revenge on them. Did he never realize how cruel and abusive they've been? Does he not hate them after all they put him through? And more importantly, does he not blame them for it? Well, let's go deep into Doof's mind and let's see what he actually thinks about them. Mr. and Mrs. Doofenshmirtz are both terrible parents and at the same time horrible people. Whenever they weren't too busy abandoning and disowning their son, they like to spend their days abusing little Heinz and treating him like dirt. We all remember how his father forced him to stand perfectly still in their garden pretending to be a lawn gnome, how he forced him to wear girl clothes to school for a whole year, and even how he named his new puppy Only Son just to remind everyone how the dog was like a son to him, while his actual son meant absolutely nothing to him. His mother too was horrible, just in a different way. She seemed to simply have blatant favoritism towards Doof's younger brother, Roger. Apparently, that's because her love was always inexplicably linked to kickball, and Roger was a natural at it. This seems to be the reason why this woman passed down her precious family recipe for meatloaf to Roger instead of Heinz, and why she used to tell Roger lovely and happy stories before going to bed, and extremely scary ones to Heinz. However, did Doof ever plan to get back at his parents for loving his brother or the dog more than him? Did he ever plot against them to make them pay for forcing him to wear girl clothes or to be a lawn gnome? No, the thoughts didn't even cross his mind. Instead, he sought revenge on show dogs and lawn gnome owners, and he tried to humiliate and even get rid of his brother on several occasions. Somehow, Heinz seems to never actually blame his parents, but rather some other external factor. In fact, whenever his parents are involved, his schemes for revenge always revolve around the idea that if that one thing had been different, then everything would have worked out, and his parents would have acted differently. They would have loved him and would have been proud of him. But because that one thing happened in the wrong place at the wrong time, Doof felt like he was robbed of his parents' love. So it wasn't really his dad's fault if Heinz was forced to be a lawn gnome. No, the dad was just mad that their lawn gnome got repossessed. Nothing personal. It wasn't his mom's fault if she needed hundreds of dresses for her unborn daughter long before she even learned the sex of the baby. She was just excited. And it sure wasn't his parents' fault if they forced Heinz to wear said dresses. They just ran out of material, that was the only thing to do. The real problem was that he didn't look manly enough in those clothes. How is it their fault? And if you pay close attention to his backstories, you guys would be surprised at how few of them revolve around his parents. Mr. and Mrs. Doofenshmirtz either appear or are mentioned in just a handful of episodes, and in only about 9 of them do they do something truly despicable that Heinz considers backstory worthy. And surprise surprise, in none of these episodes does Doof seek revenge on them, no matter how horribly the parents behaved. That's simply because he never really blamed them, not even for the silliest of things.
I'm not exactly very handsome. My doctor says it's genetic, but I don't blame my parents. I blame everyone else in the entire TriState Area for being better looking than me!
Don't get me wrong, Doof doesn't think his parents are lovely and caring people who've always had his best interest at heart, but he seems to think that those two just had to treat him so horribly. They were forced by the circumstances. He doesn't blame them because in his eyes, they had every right to treat him that way. How did he not understand that his parents were the spawn of the devil? The thing is, victims of abuse, like Heinz, often don't even realize that they're being abused. It might be crystal clear to us that that was a toxic environment, but he had no way of knowing what a healthy one even looked like. Except maybe for the time he was abandoned and temporarily raised by ocelots. It's crucial to remember that Heinz was isolated the entire time. He didn't realize the abuse was abnormal because he had no friends to talk to or compare his life with. After all, as a lawn gnome, he wasn't allowed to move or even talk to anyone. Not to mention, his peers didn't even dare come near him because he smelled oh so bad. The guy's only friend was a balloon. And while balloons are notoriously famous for being great listeners, they can't really replace actual living people, especially since they can't help you realize how toxic your home life is. So because of this, Heinz thought that what his parents did was completely normal. Maybe it was too harsh, and maybe that's not how other families do it, but Doof just went along with it. He was okay with it because deep down, he still loved his parents and wanted to please them. And I think the show made it quite clear that not only he still loves them, but he also wants them to love him back. In the episode This Is Your Backstory, for some reason he was super excited to see his mom again, even though she just came to spank him. In Misperceived Monotream, Doof explained that he planned to use his innator to make his daughter obey him, and more importantly, make his father love him. Then, on Father's Day, he was eager to make things right with his dad again by finding the family's long-lost lawn gnome and giving it back to him. He was yelling, "Let the father-son healing begin!" So excited, it's obvious he still cares.
My father will be so happy! Well, maybe not happy, but anything is an improvement on surly and dismissive.
The reason why this love was never reciprocated though is that in this family you have to earn your parents' love. So naturally, Heinz asked himself, how? How to earn it? How did Roger earn it? Well, if you think about it, the main difference between Doof and his brother is that Roger managed to make his parents proud, while Heinz never could. So there it is. He realized he just needs to do some grand gesture or reach some impressive goal to make his parents proud. And that's what he did. Or rather, tried to do. Since his mother loved Roger more because he was an expert at kickball, Doof invents an innator to help him win the yearly family kickball game that his mother organized. Since his father was ashamed of him because he couldn't jump from the high dive, when it's safe to assume his brother did it without hesitation, 40 years later, Heinz was still determined to prove he was not a schnitzel, so he tried to jump even though he was terrified. He constantly went above and beyond, trying to please them and give them a reason to love him, but perhaps Doof's most ambitious and significant attempt to make his parents proud is his plan to rule the TriState Area. Let's think about it. How come Heinz wants to rule it? We know that's his ultimate goal, but why precisely does he want to conquer it? Well, his brother's the mayor, so what better way to impress his parents than outdoing him, being one step ahead of him for once? Interestingly enough, back in Season 1, before the episode Hail Dufania, when Roger became mayor, Heinz didn't really plan on taking over the Tri-State Area. None of his schemes up to that point had anything to do with ruling it. Some of them involved wreaking havoc in town, but he never talked about conquering it before. Yet, once his brother got elected, Doof suddenly wanted to rule it. You could argue that he wanted to be the ruler just because that would make it easier for him to get his revenge on everyone he hates, but then again, why did he never try to conquer it before Roger got elected? It's clear he's just doing it to prove himself. After all, if Dr. D just wanted plain old revenge on Roger and nothing more, then he could have simply ruined his brother's career and have him lose his mayorship. That would have been enough. However, Doof also wants to take over the Tri-State Area for himself. And it's clearly not because he's power hungry, and we just said that it's not in order to get back at those who wronged him, so why does he want it? Because that's his way of making his parents proud. He just wants to prove that he can outdo his brother. Really, notice how Doof doesn't just settle for Denville, but at the same time, he doesn't aim for the whole world. He wants the Tri-State Area, which is just one single step ahead of his brother, Mayor of Denville. He doesn't care about ruling the world, he just wants to prove himself. Prove that he can achieve exactly what his brother achieved, and also a little more than that. If the parents love Roger because he did X, if Doofenshmirtz does X plus 1, then they will have to love him. And I think that's the same reason why his schemes back in Season 1 mostly revolved around becoming rich. Before Heinz came up with the whole idea of ruling the Tri-State Area, he spent his days thinking of get-rich-quick schemes. The highway, the hot chocolate, the steak glasses, and even building a wall around the Tri-State Area, making people pay an outrageous amount of money to get in and out. But why would he do that? After all, he often pointed out that money is no object for him. That's because the alimony checks he receives from his ex-wife are extremely generous. So why would he want to make millions through his schemes? He might be evil and resentful, but he doesn't care about money, just like he doesn't care about power. Remember, it's Doof we're talking about. Instead, I think that must have been just yet another way to try to make his parents proud, and it's so sad when you think about it. Deep down, he's still hoping that his parents would love him, care for and about him, hoping that perhaps some big gesture might change their mind about him and would finally make them love him. But sadly, even though they couldn't care less about him, Heinz still loves his parents very much. So he will always be happy to see them and spend time with them, but at the same time, he will forever let them abuse him, even as an adult. And unfortunately, he will forever let them get away with it. And I'm sure that if they ever asked for forgiveness, which is extremely unlikely, he would totally forgive them because he's too good of a person. Ironic, given how he tried his best to be evil all summer long, but that's who he is. Good. And because of that, he never managed to confront his parents and resolve the biggest trauma of his entire life. Luckily though, this toxic relationship with his parents is probably what allowed Dr. D to be such a great dad to Vanessa. Heinz's love for his daughter is a given. Vanessa doesn't need to prove herself or be any different to deserve it. So just because his parents didn't love him, that doesn't mean Doof cannot shower his daughter with unconditional love. He doesn't dare repeat Mr. and Mrs. Doofenshmirtz's mistakes, and that really does him credit. He might not know what being loved feels like, but that doesn't stop him from loving others. And perhaps, since Vanessa is so mature, I can totally see her opening her dad's eyes to his parents' abuse, making him stand up to them, and hopefully help him get the closure he so desperately needs.
Wow.
In case you guys want to see more of my Phineas and Ferb character analyses or need a recap of Doof's life, then I've got you covered. Let me know your thoughts on Doof and his troubling relationship with his parents, and I guess that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Ciao!